Introduction. Quote, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step." Lao Tzu. In a world where the wounds of the past often remain hidden, obscured by the hustle of daily life or the masks we wear to protect ourselves, the journey of healing from childhood trauma is both deeply personal and universally relevant. This book, Childhood Trauma Recovery: Healing Your Inner Child, is not just a collection of professional insights and strategies. It is a symbol of hope, a guide for those who find themselves lost in the aftermath of early life experiences that have left indelible marks on their soul. The essence of childhood trauma is complex and multifaceted. It can arise from experiences that are overtly abusive or subtly neglectful, from events that are singularly catastrophic or chronically stressful. The American Psychological Association defines trauma as an emotional response to a terrible event like an accident, rape, or natural disaster. However, this definition has expanded over the years to include the prolonged, repetitive stress of experiences like childhood neglect or abuse. See American Psychological Association. These experiences, especially when unaddressed, can shape our personality, our relationships, and our view of the world in profound ways. This book is designed to speak to you, whether you are a survivor of childhood trauma, a caregiver, a therapist, or simply someone who wishes to understand more about this critical aspect of human experience. Its structure, centered around key questions that frequently arise in the context of childhood trauma, is intended to offer both clarity and a sense of direction. Each chapter is crafted to address a specific aspect of childhood trauma, from understanding its roots to navigating the challenging path of recovery. In writing this book, I have drawn upon a wealth of resources: the latest research in psychology and neuroscience, insights from therapy and counseling practices, and the powerful narratives of those who have walked the path of recovery. These sources collectively underscore the importance of a compassionate, informed approach to dealing with childhood trauma. For instance, a study by Dr. Nadine Burke Harris, a renowned pediatrician and trauma expert, highlights how adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, are linked to chronic health issues, mental illness, and substance misuse in adulthood. See Harris et al. Such insights are pivotal in understanding the far-reaching impact of childhood trauma. As you embark on this journey through the pages of this book, remember that the road to healing is not linear. It is a path of discovery, of learning, and, most importantly, of reclaiming the narrative of your life. This book aims to be a companion in that journey, offering insights, tools, and most importantly, a message of hope that healing is possible and your inner child, no matter how wounded, can find a way back to peace and wholeness. Case study: Noelle's journey through the shadows. Noelle was in her mid-30s when she first realized that the difficulties she faced in her adult life were deeply rooted in her childhood experiences. On the surface, Noelle was successful, a high-achieving professional with a stable job and a seemingly happy life. But beneath this veneer of success, she grappled with unexplained anxiety, a pervasive sense of unworthiness, and difficulties in forming close relationships. Her journey of self-discovery began during a routine therapy session. It was there, in the safe confines of a therapist's office, that Noelle first spoke about her childhood. She described growing up in a home where her emotional needs were consistently ignored. Her parents, though not overtly abusive, were emotionally distant, preoccupied with their own issues, and often dismissive of her feelings. Dr. Janice Webb, a psychologist renowned for her work on childhood emotional neglect, CEN, states that this form of neglect, where a child's emotional needs are not adequately met, can have lasting effects on their adult life. See Webb. In Noelle's case, this neglect manifested in her constant search for validation and her struggles with self-esteem. As therapy progressed, Noelle started to recognize patterns in her behavior that were linked to her childhood experiences. She often found herself overachieving, driven by a subconscious need to prove her worth. Her relationships were marked by a fear of abandonment, making her overly accommodating and reluctant to express her own needs. A breakthrough came when Noelle learned about the concept of the inner child, the part of one's psyche that retains the emotions, memories, and sensitivity of childhood. Renowned psychiatrist and author Dr. Carl Jung emphasized the importance of acknowledging and healing this part of oneself to achieve wholeness. See Jung, The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious. For Noelle, acknowledging her inner child meant understanding the deep-seated reasons behind her emotional responses and behaviors. Through a combination of therapy, self-help exercises, and a supportive network, Noelle began the slow process of healing. She learned to nurture her inner child, to provide the validation and care that she had missed in her childhood. This was not a quick fix, but a gradual journey of self-awareness and acceptance. Noelle's story is not unique. It echoes the experiences of many who have faced childhood trauma in its various forms. Her journey is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of healing. It serves as a symbol of hope for others who embark on this challenging yet rewarding path towards recovery. The Power of Questions, a guide to our approach. As you venture into the pages of Childhood Trauma Recovery, Healing Your Inner Child, you'll notice that each chapter begins with a question. This isn't a stylistic choice made on a whim, rather it's a deliberate strategy rooted in educational psychology and therapeutic practice, designed to engage you, the reader, on a deeper and more personal level. Engagement and relatability. Questions naturally pique curiosity. According to a study published in the Journal of Educational Psychology, questions can stimulate cognitive engagement and enhance learning. See Rosenshine. By framing each chapter around a question, the book aims to directly address the concerns that might be at the forefront of your mind or the minds of those affected by childhood trauma. Facilitating self-reflection. Questions encourage introspection. Dr. James Pennebaker, a psychologist renowned for his research on writing and healing, emphasizes the therapeutic power of writing and reflecting on personal experiences. See Pennebaker, Opening Up. Each question in this book is designed to prompt you to reflect on your own experiences and feelings, fostering a deeper connection with the content. Guiding the healing journey. The journey of healing from childhood trauma is unique for each individual. The question-based format allows you to navigate this journey at your own pace, finding relevance and meaning in each chapter based on your personal history and current needs. Enhancing clarity and focus. The structure of question-based chapters brings clarity and focus to complex subjects. By breaking down the broad topic of childhood trauma into specific, manageable questions, the book aims to provide clear, focused insights into each aspect of trauma and recovery. Encouraging active learning. Active participation is crucial in the process of healing and personal growth. By engaging with the questions, you're not just passively receiving information, you're actively participating in your own process of understanding and healing. Building a comprehensive understanding. The cumulative effect of these questions is to build a holistic understanding of childhood trauma and its impact. Rather than presenting disjointed pieces of information, the question-based approach weaves a coherent narrative that encompasses the many facets of trauma and recovery. In sum, the questions that headline each chapter are more than just titles. They are invitations to explore, understand, and heal. They are the guiding lights on a path that can often feel dark and uncertain. As you move through this book, let these questions be your companions, guiding you toward insights, healing, and ultimately, a renewed sense of self. Chapter Summary. Defining trauma. Childhood trauma includes both obvious and subtle experiences, deeply impacting emotional and physical health. Healing as a journey emphasizes that recovering from trauma is a dynamic and personal process involving self-discovery and growth. Illustrative case study. Noelle's story showcases the lasting impact of emotional neglect and the healing power of reconnecting with one's inner child. Apply it. Journal prompts. 1. Personal expectations. What are my hopes and expectations from reading Childhood Trauma and Recovery, Healing Your Inner Child? What specific areas of my life do I wish to improve or understand better? 2. Reflecting on childhood experiences. Can I identify events or patterns from my childhood that may have impacted my adult life? How do I feel about these memories now? 3. Relating. How do you relate to Noelle's story of emotional neglect and her journey toward healing? 4. Understanding my emotional response. How do my childhood experiences influence my emotional responses in adulthood? Are there any recurring feelings or reactions that I can trace back to my early years? Suggested goals. 1. Dedicated reading and reflection time. Over the next 2 months, dedicate 30 minutes each day to reading Childhood Trauma and Recovery, Healing Your Inner Child, and reflecting on its content. Choose a consistent time of day when you can read and reflect without distractions, aiming to deepen your understanding of the material and apply its teachings to your personal journey of healing and growth. 2. Journaling for self-discovery. For the duration of reading this book, commit to 15 minutes of journaling after each reading session. Focus on documenting your thoughts, feelings, and insights related to each chapter. Aim to complete at least 1 page per entry, using the journal as a reflective tool to track your emotional and cognitive journey through the book. By the end of your reading, aim to have a comprehensive journal that encapsulates your personal growth and learning. 3. Complete the exercises in the introduction section of the Childhood Trauma and Recovery Workbook to deepen your understanding and apply the concepts discussed. Chapter 1. Was it even abuse? Unraveling the complexities of childhood trauma. Quote, "You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them." Maya Angelou. In this chapter, we'll explore a question that haunts many. Was it even abuse? The complexity of childhood trauma often leaves individuals questioning the validity of their experiences. This doubt can be a significant barrier to acknowledging the trauma and seeking help. Understanding childhood trauma is essential. It comes in various forms, not all of which are as overt or easily identifiable as physical abuse. Childhood trauma encompasses a range of experiences, including emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, as well as neglect, which can be just as damaging as other forms of abuse. The Child Welfare Information Gateway describes neglect as a form of maltreatment that includes failing to provide necessary care, supervision, or affection. See Child Welfare Information Gateway, 2019. Though less visible, neglect can have profound long-term effects on an individual's psychological and emotional development. Moreover, the concept of childhood trauma extends beyond individual actions to include systemic issues and traumatic environments. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAM-HSA, emphasizes the role of adverse community environments, such as violence and chronic poverty, in shaping childhood experiences. See SAM-HSA 2014. This chapter aims to broaden the understanding of what constitutes childhood trauma. By exploring various types and forms of trauma, we seek to validate the experiences of those who have suffered, often in silence. It's not just about the physical scars. It's about the emotional and psychological wounds that may not be visible to the eye, but are deeply felt in the heart and mind. As we journey through this chapter, we will examine the signs and symptoms of childhood trauma. The goal is to provide a compassionate understanding that empowers individuals to recognize and acknowledge their trauma. This recognition is the first step towards healing and reclaiming control over one's life story. Exploring the definition and types of trauma. Childhood trauma, a term encompassing a wide range of distressing experiences during one's formative years, profoundly impacts an individual's psychological, emotional, and physical well-being. The American Psychiatric Association defines trauma as an emotional response to a terrible event, such as an accident, war, or natural disaster. This definition has broadened to include chronic experiences like neglect, abuse, and living in a traumatic environment, as defined by the American Psychiatric Association, 2013. We will explore abuse as defined by the Adverse Childhood Experience, ACE study, along with more subtle forms of abuse that often arise in what a particular therapist refers to as tricky families. See Tehan. The ACE Study and Questionnaire. The ACE Study, a landmark research project by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, and Kaiser Permanente, categorizes childhood trauma into 3 main groups. 1. Abuse, physical, emotional, sexual. 2. Neglect, physical, emotional. 3. Household challenges, mental illness, incarceration, substance abuse, parental separation or divorce. Each type of adverse experience scores a point, revealing that a higher ACE score correlates with increased risks of negative health and social outcomes later in life. The ACE questionnaire, a critical element of the ACE study, is a tool designed to identify and quantify these adverse childhood experiences. It asks respondents a series of questions about their exposure to various forms of abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. The ACE questionnaire is crucial in determining the potential impact of these experiences on long-term health and behavior. It aids professionals in understanding the complex interplay between early adverse experiences and adult health outcomes. Despite its significance, the ACE questionnaire primarily focuses on overt forms of abuse and may not fully encompass the nuanced trauma encountered in subtly dysfunctional family environments. Introducing the concept of tricky families. To address this gap, Patrick Tehan, LICSW, an expert in the field of childhood trauma, introduces the concept of tricky families. These families might appear functional on the surface, providing basic needs and stability, yet they often fail to meet the children's emotional and developmental requirements. Characteristics of such families include emotionally unavailable parents, toxic intimacy dynamics, alcoholism, narcissistic or authoritarian attitudes, and environments where sharing external abuse experiences is unsafe. In tricky families, the trauma may not be overt, but can still significantly impact a child's development. This subtler form of trauma, while aligning with the ACE study categories, manifests in less obvious ways. Physical abuse might be in the form of spankings rather than beatings. Emotional abuse might not involve explicit verbal assaults, but could force a child into a parental role, and sexual abuse might include exposure to inappropriate materials. Similarly, domestic violence might be more verbal than physical. Both blatant abuse and the insidious trauma of a tricky family can lead to long-term issues like intimacy problems, low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, addictions, attachment problems, and unhealthy reactions. Recognizing the spectrum of childhood experiences that lead to trauma is essential for understanding and addressing these experiences' long-term impacts. Chapter Summary. The complexity of childhood trauma highlights the multifaceted nature of childhood trauma, including emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, as well as neglect. Trauma beyond physical abuse. explores how neglect and less visible forms of abuse significantly affect psychological and emotional development. Introduction of Tricky Families concept. Patrick Teahan's concept explains how some families fail to meet emotional and developmental needs, leading to subtler forms of trauma. Long-term effects of trauma discusses how both overt and subtle trauma can lead to issues like depression, anxiety, and relationship problems in adulthood. Encouraging trauma acknowledgement promotes the recognition and understanding of one's own childhood trauma as the first step towards healing and empowerment. Apply it. Journal prompts. 1. Reflecting on emotional neglect. Think about times in your childhood when your emotional needs might have been overlooked. How has this affected your adult relationships and self-esteem? 2. Identifying subtle trauma. Recall a situation from your childhood that seemed normal but may have been subtly traumatic. How do you perceive that event now? 3. Beyond the ACE questionnaire. Consider an experience from your childhood that wouldn't typically be covered by the ACE questionnaire, but has had a significant impact on you. 4. Tricky families dynamics. Reflect on aspects of your family life that might fit the description of a tricky family. How have these dynamics influenced your adult life? Suggested goals. 1. Acknowledgement goal. Set a goal to acknowledge one aspect of your childhood trauma this week. It could be recognizing a pattern of emotional neglect or admitting the impact of a tricky family dynamic on your current behavior. 2. Self-compassion goal. Practice self-compassion by dedicating 10 minutes each day to affirm positive self-statements that counteract negative beliefs developed from childhood experiences. 3. Therapeutic goal. If you haven't already, consider starting therapy or counseling focused on childhood trauma. Set a goal to research potential therapists or counseling services and make an initial appointment or consultation. 4. Complete the exercises in Chapter 1 of the Childhood Trauma and Recovery Workbook to deepen your understanding and apply the concepts discussed.